I would like to come to our main topic, and that is COVID vaccine. Yes, no, yes. A COVID-19 vaccine is a vaccine intended to provide acquired immunity against COVID-19. Prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, work to develop a vaccine, diseases, SARS and MERS had established knowledge about the structure and function of coronavirus, which accelerated development during early 2020 of varied technology platforms for a COVID-19 vaccine. By mid-December 2020, 57 vaccine candidates were in clinical research, including 40 in phase 1 and 2 trials and 17 in phase 2-3 trials. In phase 3 trials, several COVID-19 vaccines demonstrated efficacy as high as 95% in preventing symptomatic COVID-19 infections. National health agencies have approved 5 vaccines for public use, including Tojnia-Meran from Pfizer BioNTech, BBI-BP Corvi by Sinopharm, CoronaVac by Sinovac, mRNA 1273 by Moderna, and GAM COVID Vac by Gamaleya Research Institute. By December, more than 10 billion vaccine doses had been pre-ordered by countries, with about half of the doses purchased by high-income countries comprising only 14% of the world's population. The manufacturers of 3 vaccines closest to global distribution, Pfizer, Moderna, and AstraZeneca, predicted a manufacturing capacity of 5.3 billion doses in 2021, which could be used to vaccinate about 3 billion people, as the vaccine required 2 doses for a protective effect against COVID-19. Due to the high demand of pre-orders in 2021, 2020 and 2021, people in low-income developing countries may not receive vaccinations from these manufacturers until 2023 or 2024, increasing the need for the global COVAX initiative to supply vaccines equitably. Large pharmaceutical companies with experience in making vaccines at scale, including Johnson & Johnson, AstraZeneca, and GlaxoSmithKline GSK, formed alliances with biotechnology companies, national governments, and universities to accelerate progression to an effective vaccine. To combine financial and manufacturing capabilities for a pandemic adjuvanted vaccine technology, GSK joined with Sanofi in an uncommon partnership of multinational companies to support accelerated vaccine development. In the haste to provide a vaccine on a rapid timeline for the COVID-19 pandemic, developers and governments are accepting a high risk of short-circuiting the vaccine development process, with one industry executive saying, "The crisis in the world is so big that each of us will have to take maximum risk now to put this disease to a stop." Prior to COVID-19, a vaccine for an infectious disease had never before been produced in less than several years, and no vaccine existed for preventing a coronavirus infection in humans. However, vaccines have been produced against several animal diseases caused by coronaviruses, including, as of 2003, infectious bronchitis virus in birds, canine coronavirus, and feline coronavirus. Previous projects to develop vaccines for viruses in the family Coronaviridae that affects humans have been aimed at severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, and Middle East respiratory syndrome, MERS. Vaccines against SARS and MERS have been tested in non-human animals. As of 21st December 2020, 17 countries and the European Union had approved Tojina-Meran, the Pfizer-BioNTech vaccine, for emergency use. Bahrain also gave emergency marketing authorization for the vaccine manufactured by Sinopharm, followed by the United Arab Emirates. In the United Kingdom, 138,000 people had received Tojina-Meran by 16th December during the first week of the UK vaccination program. On 11th December 2020, the United States Food and Drug Administration, FDA, granted an emergency use authorization, EUA, for Tojina-Meran. A week later, they granted an EUA for mRNA 1273, the Moderna vaccine. making the United States the first country to authorize 2 vaccines for public use. The effectiveness of new vaccine is defined by its efficacy. Several COVID-19 vaccines have demonstrated 80+ percentage efficacy in phase 3 trials, including mRNA 1273, Tojanamiron, BBI-BP, CORV, and GAM COVID-Vac. An efficacy of less than 60% may result in failure to create herd immunity. In the case of COVID-19, specifically a vaccine efficacy of 70% may be enough to stop the pandemic, but if it has only 60% efficacy, outbreaks may continue. And efficacy of less than 60% will not provide enough herd immunity. In mid-December 2020, a new SARS-CoV-2 variant, SARS-CoV-2 VUI 2020-12/01 was identified in the UK. While preliminary data indicates that this variant showed an estimated increase in reproductive number R by 0.4 or greater and an increased transmissibility of up to 70%, there is as yet no evidence for lower vaccine effectiveness. Till yesterday, 2 new SARS-CoV-2 variant was detected, which were originated from South Africa and Nigeria. The Indian Council of Medical Research, ICMR, has said that encouraging phase 1 and phase 2 Covaxin trial results have proved the path for phase 3 clinical trial in India, which is currently ongoing at 22 sites. In India, the government will conduct a dry run of COVID-19 vaccination in 2 districts, each of 4 states, Punjab, Assam, Andhra Pradesh, and Gujarat, on December 28-29, 5 sites in each district will be established for the purpose. The dry run will include testing for cold storage and transportation, managing crowds, and role of staff on vaccine-related duty. Now, the topic is COVID vaccine, yes, no, yes. And to discuss this topic today, we have a very, very elite, experienced, learned, medical fraternity. Those who are expert in these fields are with us. And I would like to introduce my first guest. He is Dr. Om Srivastav. Dr. Om Srivastav is the Director of Infectious Disease at Jaslok Hospital, Mumbai. Dr. Srivastav is the member of COVID Task Force, Government of Maharashtra. He is the visiting professor, Infectious Disease, D.Y. Patil University Hospital, Navigation, Mumbai. He is the unit head of Kasturba Hospital for Communicable Disease, Mumbai. Dr. Om Srivastav had completed his training, MD Medicine from India. He then commenced his training in Sydney, Australia, where he trained at St. Vincent's Hospital, Liverpool Hospital, and Royal North Shore Hospital. He also serves as member of State Advisory Committee H1N1, State Malaria Death Review Committee, Dengue Death Review Committee, Swine Flu Death Review Committee, and Maharashtra Communicable Disease Prevention and Control Technical Committee, MCDPCTC. Welcome, Dr. Om Srivastav, on our show. Dr. Srivastav, my question to you is, because everybody is waiting for this vaccine initially, but now once the vaccine has come, there is lots of dilemma in the mind of people. So my first question to you is, since you all are high priority to receive vaccine, would you take vaccine yourself if it is offered to you next week? If yes, then why? And if no, then why not? Dr. Om Srivastav, please.
Good morning, Dr. Goyal, and good morning to everybody else, the other panelists and the audience here. Thank you for your kind words of introduction. Very important subject that you are discussing today, and very well put as to whether it is a yes, no, or a yes. So that is probably the situation where we are exactly as you have put it. Is it a yes, maybe? Is it a maybe, no? Is it a definite no or a definite yes? Answer to all these questions at this time is that I don't think that there is enough clarity at this very instant. Of course, that may change in the next few days, the next few weeks. It might take a little longer than that. I will just quickly elaborate as to why I'm saying this. Most of the vaccines that we are talking about that are likeliest to be commissioned into commercial use for the common public are still about technologies that we know very little about. For instance, the messenger RNA is a brand new technology. The technology in itself is very exciting. It is meant to be, freezing some part of the response of the patient, and that way it is not going to be causing any further troubles with this virus. That is the good part that we know about. The not so good part is that this is theoretical. We don't know what else the vaccine is going to do once it gets into the patient's system. And by saying that, I mean that it may actually freeze the response irreversibly of a number of other conditions in such a patient, which may be mediated through that part of the immune system or that part of the cell signaling, that is the messenger RNA. So, to answer your question in one word, as to whether I would take the vaccine if it were offered to me tomorrow, my answer at this time is that I would wait, and that is my personal opinion. It's got nothing to do with my professional capacity of sitting in the committees that you mentioned, where I have to give my own inputs about what is it that should be done. My own personal opinion is that yes, while I am excited and I'm looking forward with a lot of enthusiasm on the vaccine being made available, I don't think we know enough. I think we need a little more information to find out, to say that this vaccine is going to be giving the same results in reality. Because up until now, all the numbers that we have seen have been trial numbers, have been numbers of observations, have been numbers of people in situations where everything was controlled. I'd like to see what these numbers look like when the vaccine is actually given, and that the efficacy that has been mentioned so far, anywhere from 60 to 95%, I'd like to see that translate into reality. So if the vaccine gets given tomorrow morning to say 100,000 people in India, I'd like to see how these 100,000 people are doing in about 2 months, 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, before I decide that this is the best option and that the messenger RNA is only one part of the vaccines that are going to be available. Please also keep in mind that even if it were, say, any one company to say that, yes, we are going to provide 1 billion vials of the vaccine, only 1 in 7 people on the planet are going to get vaccinated. All right. So I don't think it is a need that is going to be met by any one company. It will probably be a need that will be met by a number of vaccine options. And that as time goes on, there will be a number of options that will become available. And then we are going to be able to see as to what kind of results are coming out of it. So again, to come back to the specific question that you have asked, in one line, my answer is going to be that I would wait. I would wait until I have a little more evidence. Dr. Goel.
Okay, thank you very much. I will wait, says Dr. Om Srivastav, and he has very, very clarified why he will wait. Now, I will like to invite my next guest, and she is Professor Nujat Hussain. Professor Nujat Hussain is the Dean, Professor, and Head of Pathology at Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia Institute of Medical Sciences, Lucknow. She is also Officer in Charge, State Referral Center for Lab Investigations at Dr. Ram Manohar Lohia Institute of Medical Sciences, Lucknow. Her clinical interests areas include oncopathology, neuropathology, and molecular pathology. Professor Hussain has done her MBBS in 1985 from JN Medical College, Aligarh, and her MD in pathology from King George Medical University in 1989 with high merits and several awards, including the prestigious President of India's Silver Medal for Best Woman Student at the University in 1985 and the KB Kunwar Gold Medal for Best Thesis in 1989. She commenced her academic career as lecturer to King's George Medical University in 1991, where she served for 20 years. She has been honored with several awards, including the DST's Boyce Cast Fellowship, under which she did a postdoctoral fellowship at the Massachusetts General Hospital, Harvard University, Boston, USA. She has published 250 papers in peer-reviewed journals, authored book chapters, delivered several prestigious lectures in India and abroad, guided more than 30 PhD students and over 60 MD, MS, and MCH theses. She is Honorary Secretary of the Indian College of Pathologists and has been member of the College of American Pathologists and the US Canadian Academy of Pathology. She has completed 10 years as president of the UP chapter of IAPP PM, as well as the president of the UP chapter of IAC. Research work has been her forte, and she has been principal investigator in 20 research extramural projects. She is on the editorial boards of several journals and reviewer for articles and so on and so on. If I will read her CV, then my whole show will go. Welcome, Professor Hussain, on our show. Professor Hussain, you have already heard what Dr. Srivastav has mentioned. Now, my question to you is the same. Since you all are very high priority to receive vaccine, would you take vaccine yourself? If it is offered to you next week. If yes, then why? And if no, then why not? Please unmute. Please unmute, Dr. Hussain, please unmute. You have to unmute, please.
Yeah, sure.
Yes, please.
So thank you very much for your kind invitation to the show. It's really a pleasure to be here with past colleagues on the panel. I would give you a very straight answer. Yes, I would take the vaccine if offered. And my concern would be that I really hope it can be offered to maximum number of people. My persuasion to the audience of this show would be to say that stop the skepticism. This is the only way out, because with this huge COVID crisis, this huge global health issue, communication issue, economical issue, this has been like a huge crisis worldwide, and we need a way out. And the only sustainable way out that we can see forth right now is the vaccine. I think the approvals that we are getting are for emergency use. So governments are being cautious. There is data out there, and my decision is not just based on a golden halo around the vaccine, but there is huge data. It is actually commendable that so much work could be accomplished in so short a time, thanks, I think, to the globalization and the cooperation that has come forth between countries. As we also understand, our own Serum Institute of India collaborated with AstraZeneca. Some of our trials were also conducted in the UK. So we have actually global data that is coming forth. The cluster of people who have been included, for example, the Pfizer gives you like 42,000 cases which were included in the trial. And it was the best method of trial, which is a randomized controlled prospective trial in which these 21,000 cases were in either arm, and the vaccines were one got the placebo and one got the vaccine. And there was a definite effectivity seen there. What is also heartening to see is that after the first dose, you are getting a fairly high effectivity almost 2 weeks later. So I feel that we should not introduce too much skepticism about the vaccine. Of course, it should be an informed consent for the person to take it. But if you ask me a straight question, I would say yes, because the data is out there, the need is out there. And we as health professionals need to encourage others around us who will look at it with more skepticism because they do not understand the technology and the data.
Thank you, Professor Dr. Nujat Hussain. And she says, yes, I will take it. So now one doctor said, wait, and the other said, yes. So now I will like to go to our third guest, and she is Dr. Nishi Singh. Dr. Nishi Singh is a physician from University of Delhi. She pursued her postgraduate studies in medical microbiology and virology at the London School of Hygiene and Tropical Medicine, UK. She was awarded the Fellowship of Royal College of Pathologists, UK in virology in 2000. She headed the Department of Microbiology, Pathology and Infection Control teams at Dubai and Rashid Hospital, Dubai Health Authority till 2003. She is adjunct professor of virology and infectious disease at the College of Medicine, Khalifa University, Abu Dhabi, and consultant virologist at Conceive Gynecology and Fertility Hospital. Welcome, Dr. Nishi Singh, on our show. Dr. Singh, you have heard both the eminent doctors, Dr. Om Srivastav and Professor Dr. Nujat Hussain. Now, the same questions to you. Since you all are high priority to receive vaccine, would you like to take vaccine yourself if it is offered to you next week? If yes, then why? And if no, then why not? Dr. Nishi Singh, please.
Good morning, everybody, and a Merry Christmas to all those celebrating. I think on this auspicious day, especially after Father Saldana's message, I think we really need a solution to the COVID crisis, as my previous friend and colleague said. Now, having worked, I also want to clarify, you said US is the only country that's offering 2 vaccines. That's not strictly true. In UAE, as we speak, we've been vaccinating our community with the Sinopharm vaccine for many weeks now. And from 4 days ago, we also got the first consignment of the Pfizer vaccine, and is being given free of charge to the entire resident population of United Arab Emirates. So I think just wanted to get that message across.
Okay.
So yes, the choice available to me personally, and I'm a frontline worker, is Pfizer vaccine also, the mRNA vaccine, has been offered to us as a priority. The question is, will I take it? Will I not take it? Now, I would like to agree with what Dr. Srivastav said, that it is still too early in the COVID crisis to roll out vaccine to a few billion people, because conducting trials in a few thousand people is not adequate, because immune response is a very tricky business. And I have worked with RNA viruses for 35 years now, and they are very tricky characters. And we've seen what has happened since the beginning of this COVID crisis, since the viral epidemiology was tracked. Already the mutants had started appearing in Wuhan in January by itself. And now already the world is talking of a third wave of infection with a very rapidly spreading, highly contagious mutant that has accumulated some 23 mutations, 5 of which are in the spike protein. Now remember, all the vaccine candidates that are in the market at the moment use the ancestral strain, the D614, which was isolated way back in January. We've come to December. The production of 8.4 billion doses that is required will take, as you said in your inaugural talk, it can go up to 2022, 2023. So are we on the right track making a vaccine with such huge numbers and the logistics of giving it out to the population, where we and I'm a pure virologist, are we even sure of what we are giving out to the population? Because yes, in the short term, like Dr. Nuzhat said, in the short term for the frontline workers, those at high risk, senior citizens, people with chronic disorders, yes, I will go ahead and vaccinate them to confer protection for the next 6 months, because that's the maximum efficacy that we know of as we speak. However, to roll it out in the general population, I'm not happy to do that at the moment till I know which way the virus turns. And I think that's a big question, because if we have the experience of flu for the last 100 years, if the drift in the mutation continues the way it is, and we've already seen with the population, already the community spread is there. There is an antibody pressure in the community. There is environmental pressures. There is the use of antivirals in the community. So the virus is a very tricky candidate. If it is put under such severe antigenic pressures, the chances are the mutations will increase. So what I give out or roll out as a vaccine today may not be of any value 6 months down the line. However, with the winter setting in the world over, especially in the Northern Hemisphere, and the numbers rising, I will only roll out the vaccine for the selected categories. But I am very hesitant and not confident at all as a virologist rolling out this vaccine to general population.
So, okay, thank you, Dr. Singh. So you say wait. Okay, so now we have 2 doctors who have said wait, and one said no, we have to take it immediately. Now I would like to invite my 4th guest, and he is Dr. Ramen Goyal. Dr. Ramen Goyal is the president of Indian Association of Gastrointestinal Endosurgeons, IAGES, which have more than 8,000 surgeons as members. Dr. Goyal has been conferred recently the honorary FRCS by Royal College of Surgeons, Edinburgh. Dr. Goyal is also the associate editor of Journal of Minimal Access Surgery, Dr. Goel is a renowned bariatric surgeon based at Mumbai. He has published many research articles and book chapters. He has also helped formulate national guidelines for surgical practice during COVID times. Welcome, Dr. Ramen Goel, on our show. Dr. Goel, you have already heard the earlier panelist, Dr. Srivastava, Professor Dr. Nujat Hussain, as well as Dr. Nishi Singh. Two of them said we have to wait, and Dr. Hussain said, no, if given the chance, I will take the vaccine immediately. Now, we would like to know the same thing from you. If given the chance, if the vaccine will be given tomorrow or next week, would you like to take it? If yes, why? If not, why? Dr. Ramen Goel, please.
All right, Merry Christmas to everyone. And I think as a doctor, I think I'll go ahead and take a vaccine if it's offered tomorrow to me, because we have waited for almost 10 months for this to happen. And in a clinical practice, we are in a different situation than the general public. One is we are at a higher risk of getting the infection. And this is not a personal risk. This is a risk to my family members, my friends, where when I come back home from hospital, I am putting them at a higher risk of getting infected through me. And also, I'm almost a super spreader if I get infected. So I think I will say that those who are in healthcare sector need to be vaccinated early so that I don't infect my patients without knowing it in a week or 10 days after I get infected accidentally. So for me, getting a vaccine is a necessity. It's not a. I don't think it's a matter of choice. There is a bit of confusion in the aspect that we are discussing. The mRNA vaccine is probably not going to be available, at least in India, for some time because of the logistical issues that are being discussed in media every day. So we are looking at the negativity towards mRNA vaccine and extrapolating it over the entire vaccine spectra. So I'm very comfortable if the AstraZeneca vaccine gets accepted in UK from UK trial, and I'll be happy to take the Serum Institute vaccine in India any moment. So I think my answer is yes, I'll go ahead and take the vaccine.
Okay, so Dr. Goel says yes, he will take the vaccine immediately. So now two doctors says yes and two says we have to wait. Okay, so now I will put up my second question to Dr. Srivastava. Dr. Srivastava, people are scared after seeing reports of post-vaccination problems. Are these concerns valid? How should people understand risks? Because what happens, there are so many media reports are appearing now and then, some fake news, some real news, which nobody knows. Somebody says, one day I read a news that so many people died of the vaccine. Some says some facial paralysis, some says allergy. Now, and when we search on Google, we found that no one has died till now, although the reports are coming. So how these things can be, concerns can be removed, because after all, it's a matter of the public health and public perception. What do you say about this, Dr. Srivastava?
I think that's a very important question. So I'm going to split your question into three parts. The first is, I'm going to say with the chuckle and idiom that I say at a number of public speaking forums and debates, that infectious disease is treatable, but anxiety has no cure. Yes, infectious disease might be pretty much the only condition that is completely reversible, but anxiety is completely incurable. So when you are anxious that if you are going to get COVID, you're going to die, the first thing that you might want to do is to tell yourself as to why that might happen. Now, if 100 people were to get COVID, 85% of those people, if 100 people were to get COVID, 85 of those people will not even know that they have COVID. That is one. Of the remaining 15, only about 5 or 7 may have that kind of illness that may require not just medication, but have to go to hospital or intensive care or a ventilator. That is the last about 5% people. So what you are trying to achieve by giving a vaccine is to say that I am going to be in that 5%. That's a big assumption. You have more chance of getting hit by a car if you're crossing the road. That is the second part. The third part is when we say that you've taken the vaccine and you've gotten an antibody. Is the antibody, first thing is whether it's a neutralizing antibody. That is one. The second thing is how long is this neutralizing antibody going to last? Now, if the neutralizing antibody is going to last in your system to anywhere between, say, 6 weeks to 3 months, which is what is the evidence right now, then you have gone to a great deal of effort and you have put yourself into a situation where your benefit is of between 6 weeks and 3 months time. That is the third thing. If you look at the history of RNA viruses in the last maybe say 10 years time, okay, it is not in the interest of an RNA virus to become more aggressive, to become lethal, to become deadlier as time goes on. That is why if you look at say the biggest outbreak, say H1N1, right? H1N1 over a period of time became a community acquired infection, and the number has stayed pretty much constant except for some seasonal variations. But people, if they listen to the basics of infection control and treatment, they do not have to go through any complications or go to hospital or go on a ventilator or even sadly succumb. The same applies for other RNA vaccines. So I think that this entire state where if you take a vaccine, it is going to be protective of you. I think that's a myth, that's a fallacy. That's also a situation where you may be expecting too much. And that what you might rather invest in is the basics, which is to say that you wear a mask, that you must have your hand hygiene, that you must keep your social distancing, that if you have a symptom, you get yourself investigated, or even if you start treatment, that's also reasonable. But assuming that a vaccine is going to be offering you that protection is actually maybe at this time, I'm not saying it won't happen, but maybe at this time, that may be an over expectation and you might be disappointed. You're far better off investing on strengthening your immune system for your age. That is a far better investment than a vaccine right now. If you are immune competent for whatever age you are, so there are people who are 80-year-olds who are very fit as immune competent adults. I do that in my immunology practice and my clinical practice. And there are 20-year-olds who are immunologically very unfit because of a number of reasons. So you're far better investing on your immune system and its responses rather than saying that the vaccine is going to provide me, because one is that it may not mount an antibody. And the second thing is that it may not be a neutralizing antibody. Both are important. The antibody must have to be in your system for a fairly prolonged period, and it must be a neutralizing antibody for it to give you any benefit. And that's the reason why I say I'm not saying that the vaccine program is something that will be inadequate. I'm only saying at this time, I don't think we know enough about taking the vaccine. The things that we are discussing either in public platforms or in the media or whatever information is coming your way about the facial palsy or the allergies or the Guillain-Barré syndrome, they are so trivial as compared to the number of people who get infected that might happen in any case in a virus that affects the central nervous system of a patient. So I don't think that is something that I would get concerned about. But like I do say, you must have your information so that you can put it in perspective and decide what is the best way to keep yourself protected from here, healthcare worker or not. Dr. Goyal.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Srivastava, for giving your views. Now, Professor Dr. Nujat Hussain, do you agree what Dr. Om Srivastava has said, or disagree? If you agree, why? And if you disagree, why? Can you give your reasons? Please unmute.
So I agree to some extent that there is a valid question there as to how long this immunity is going to last. We really don't have those long-term follow-ups, and that, if you say, would be one skepticism that would be there in the mind. And as the vaccine is launched and people get into the emergency vaccine use phase, you will get data subsequently as to how long this immunity is lasting. Whether you have a long-term immunity with memory B cells lying there, or which will get reactivated, and how long this vaccine is going to be effective is something there is definitely a doubt about. A healthy lifestyle, as Dr. Srivastava was promoting, is definitely a great thing to have, but that is not something that is going to happen overnight. That is a long-term thing that will have to become a culture with people. So what we actually require, I feel, is a very strong positive campaign. His idea that the mask, the social distancing will have to be continued, and that is what the vaccine propagators are also saying, that we will continue to have to be cautious and exercise all possible cautions. But at the same time, I strongly feel that the vaccine is one way out to increase what we were looking at from the beginning, a herd immunity. So, if we are able to reach out to the healthcare workers, to the elderly, and to the people with comorbidities, that small percentage of population which is actually coming to your ICUs, then this, as a first target, would be a great idea to start with the vaccine program. And that, I think, is the target for most vaccine programs worldwide. And our friends abroad have got the vaccine because they are healthcare workers. In fact, my daughter's gone for it and she's got her vaccine too. So,
Okay,
yes.
thank you, Professor Dr. Hussain. Now, Dr. Nishi Singh, do you agree with Dr. Srivastav or with Dr. Hussain? If yes, why? If not, why?
See, the concerns about the vaccine is that the trials have been fast forwarded to give the emergency use authorization in the current scenario of the pandemic. So the side effects that have been reported have not been, the percentages are not very high, as Dr. Srivastav pointed out. They are trivial, but the anxiety around the vaccine still remains very high because thanks, or I think no thanks to the social media, everything gets blown up beyond recognition by the scientists. So that's not the point. The point is that, first of all, we must understand, and I think this message needs to go out very strongly in the community, that the vaccines that are currently on offer do not provide sterilizing immunity. They do not prevent infection. All they are doing is ameliorating disease. And as Dr. Srivastav said in the beginning, that the disease is so mild at the moment, except for this very small, minuscule percentage of 3 to 5% people with comorbidities, where it becomes a problem. So, my own view on this is that we are barking up the wrong street, because what we need to be now doing is looking at more at the high risk populations and rolling out the vaccine, if required, only to them, and not giving it to the general population, because it's not going to, in the public health scenario, it is not going to make a difference to the general infection rates. And I'm not worried about the general infection rates. And I think that's something I have against the press, that why are we talking about millions and millions of cases being reported every day? The trackers are just going round. Why? It's just adding to the disease of anxiety more than the disease burden in the community by itself. This is the peak of the flu season as well. Why are we forgetting about influenza? Now, that's one point. Very clearly, the message needs to go out that this is not sterilizing immunity, and therefore the public health measures of masking and social distancing will have to continue. The second thing, and this I speak as a pure virologist, that we are, and Dr. Srivastav alluded to it in the beginning, that we are not even sure whether these are neutralizing antibodies. And we have had some very bad experiences with vaccination of other RNA viruses, where we've had issues of antibody enhancement. So actually, the disease is more severe in people who have pre-existing antibodies. We have not had time to assess this virus for antibody enhanced replication in the cells. So that is one big question mark that remains even today. And the other thing that I think nobody is talking about here is that we know that in children, the multisystem inflammatory disorder has become a very serious concern for pediatricians dealing with children who have been in contact with COVID patients. Now, this is a very serious thing. And if you look at the science of this, it is known that the COVID-19 actually clamps down on the innate immune response. So what then happens is that you have these late complications. where you end up with the very antibody mediated and autoantibody kind of disorders, which can be very serious. And we have not had time to look at this entire spectrum of disorders in this madness of going ahead with the vaccine. So I think we really need to take a step backwards and rethink. And at this point in time, keeping the peak, the third peak that's coming in view, only roll out the vaccine to very select groups to give only short-term protection and not roll it out in the general population.
Okay, to just give to for short-term protection, not for the general public, only for those health workers or the frontline workers, says Dr. Nishi Singh. Now I would like to ask Dr. Goyal. Dr. Goyal, I would like to repeat the question so you will understand what these, because all have mentioned many things now. The people are scared after seeing reports of post-vaccination problems. Are these concerns valid? And how should people understand risks? Dr. Goyal, please.
So I think the data on safety of vaccine is quite strong. Its efficacy in long run may be questioned by people who know more about it. And what is happening is that because media is highlighting one or two episodes of an anaphylactic reaction, in US alone, in last 15 days, 10 lakh people have already received vaccination. So if we are looking at reported reaction in 4 patients, you can imagine the kind of percentage it is. And in UK alone, 5 lakh people have got vaccinated already. So these reactions are very, very small. And just because the media gaze is there on these vaccination, these are getting highlighted. So I think people should believe that this vaccine is safe as far as immediate response is concerned, and can be taken safely. And if there is a reaction, obviously everybody is talking about keeping the person in hospital for half an hour. So it's more of an allergic reaction. If it is severe, then it will be present within minutes. So I think in my mind, there is no doubt about its safety. Now, efficacy is something which has already been discussed, and we can discuss it later.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Goyal, for giving your views. So we have a mixed views in both the questions. Now I would like to ask my next question to Dr. Srivastava. Dr. Srivastava, there are two types of vaccines which are mainly in the headlines of the media. One is of the Pfizer type and the other is of Oxford type. Now, I would like to know from you, if Pfizer and Oxford vaccines are freely available to you, which one would you prefer for yourself and why? I am taking these names as an example to avoid confusion, because there is lots of confusion, this vaccine, that vaccine. But why and which is better according to you? Dr. Srivastava, please.
So I think that based on the current information that I have at this time, both are good vaccine candidates, both Pfizer and Oxford, but they are not the only vaccine candidates who are good. There are at least 3 other vaccines. And I say that without, I don't think it's going to be appropriate for me to take their names on such a platform, but I am familiar with their work in their phase 1, phase 2 part of their trials. At least 2 of the vaccine manufacturers that I'm talking about have got very robust scientific platforms, very good data, and very good data evaluation. Those things that they have shared with me as part of more like a training of trainers kind of a situation is, to my mind, it is very robust. I think that they should stand scientific scrutiny. That data will be available in the public platform by either by end of January or first week of February. And that is when we'll be having a far bigger choice as to what are the vaccines which are available. So there are a number of vaccine candidates who are probably going to be what may appear right now as being a very promising candidate may not turn out to be promising in the very foreseeable future. What may appear to be a dark horse may turn out to be a good candidate. I think that, again, I would wait, like I said, for seeing in the next month's time for all the candidates to be available with their data in a platform that I can see, I can evaluate for my own satisfaction. as to how good or how bad is the data. When you are making a vaccine, see, at an average, a vaccine can take anywhere from 3 to 5 years to about 10 years time. When you have made a vaccine in 9 months time, March is when we found out about COVID-19 in India. And between then and now, if you say by December that the vaccine is ready, then you have compressed a process that takes at least 5 years time into 9 months time. What I would like to know is that, are these processes that have been compressed, is there something that may have been amiss? You see, isn't that the whole point of a scientific platform, that you should be able to put across what you think that you have done for your peers to see and evaluate and tell you that yes, what you're saying is very good, very sound, very scientific. And yes, there may be a few things here and there, but otherwise, this is very robust data. So I think that I don't have all the information. That is one. The second thing that I would like to share, I'm not going to take that name again, but one of the vaccines that we give to people over 60 for pulmonary conditions. All right. At one time, I gave that vaccine to about a number of people, because it was at that time it had just become indicated. And of the people that I gave them to, about 30–40% of them had anaphylaxis, anaphylactoid kind of reaction, swelling of face, swelling of the epiglottis, difficulty in breathing. 3 of them required to be hospitalized, and 1 of them required ventilation. So when I look back on the literature available, I found that 2 of the preservatives in this vaccine were, one was egg yolk, the other was a drug called amikacin. And of the people that I'm talking about, those patients that I'm talking about, almost all of them were vegetarians, and 1 of them had an allergy to aminoglycosides. So I wrote to the parent company, and the parent company wrote back saying, but we have mentioned this in the literature insert, that people who may be allergic to either egg yolk or to amikacin should not be taking this vaccine. Now, literature inserts, I'd like to know, I'm sure everybody on this platform will agree, that how often do you read it? Yes. So information must be put out in a way that it is available for everybody to see, not just you and I, but also the patients. That's the point I'm making. I think that there must be transparency, there must be clarity, there must be a complete amount of scientific availability of data to say that this is safe. So when I say that, I'll say again, we are talking about 5 vaccine candidates. I think that if you give it a month's time, we are going to find that there are going to be at least another 5 vaccine candidates whose data is so robust that you might consider there are more than 5 options. But we don't have that information on our hands as yet. Dr. Goyal.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Srivastava. Dr. Nujat, Professor Dr. Nujat Hussain, I would like to ask the same thing from you, but my question is bit because either I'm not clear myself or I'm not putting it properly. What I heard or why I have read, there are 2 types of technology used for the vaccine. One by the, I'm taking the name because for the convenience sake, by the Oxford, or which is partnered by our Serum India company in India. And the other is Pfizer, because they says that the Oxford or the Serum is a conventional type of vaccine, and the other one is something which is not been used earlier. These are the 2 types of vaccine. Or as Dr. Srivastava mentioned that others are coming. So are we going to have more different types of technology are being used, or only these 2 types of technology? If so, that is what we want to know first. And secondly, which one you prefer, which technology you will prefer about the vaccine, whether the latest one, the Pfizer one, or the conventional one, which the Serum India is using or the Oxford is using.
So I think what you want to clarify is the 2 different technologies that different people are using. Also, apart from the technology, it is also the part of the spike protein that is being used. So different areas are also being, the molecule that is being used by different people to cause the antigenicity is also different. So as Dr. Srivastava very rightly pointed out that when these vaccines are given to the larger population in this emergency module approval, we will get subsequently data on how effective they are being as far as the effectivity as well as the side effects are concerned. But the mRNA technology basically it packages your mRNA, which is the complementary strand of the DNA on which the protein is manufactured. So these mRNA would then sort of get inserted into your cells. So if it is a local injection, get into the muscle cells there, and then produce the protein, which would then in turn cause the antigenicity to the patient. So this is the new technology that is there. Apparently a technology well studied earlier and a fairly robust technology because it has been approved. But definitely the conventional one is the one that is being used by where the protein, the antigenic protein itself is given to the patient. So given a choice, if you're talking about me personally, maybe I could actually go for either of them. Depending on what my concern mainly here would be availability of the vaccine. So there will always be a limited capacity for manufacture, and even though the SII is claiming that they can do 100 million doses every month, but there will be a limitation to supply. There will be a limitation to the cold chain. Again, as some of the vaccines require a -70 or -80 chain, others require a 2 to 8 degrees. We have a very successful vaccination program in India. But we have to understand that what we were targeting there was the children population. We haven't really done a huge adult vaccination program in India. So technology, the know-how, the capability of reaching out to so many people is going to be something that will be hard to develop, and maybe people will really not have choices to say which one they are able, is there for them, unless it is about a small group of a private sector affording people who can go and just take a choice of the vaccine that they require. So my major concern would be the availability to a larger mass if we are really looking at preventing this chain of
Okay,
disease.
thank you. Thank you, Professor Dr. Hussain. And according to Dr. Hussain, she can go for any of the vaccine which is available because she would like to get the vaccination as early as possible. Now I would like to go to Dr. Nishi Singh. Dr. Nishi Singh, now one thing is clear. One is a latest technology used by Pfizer, other companies, and other is a conventional, which is used by Oxford and all those. Now, my same question to you. Given the choice, which one you will prefer among these two, the new technology or the conventional one?
Okay, so I practice in a different country, and as we speak now, I have the choice of either of them. So I have the Sinopharm vaccine, which is the inactivated virus vaccine, which has been being given out for more than a month now. And like I said, as of this week, we've also got the Pfizer vaccine available. The choice is a difficult one because I'm quite in favor of using a tried and tested technology because we know what are the what we are getting into really. So if it's an activated vaccine from Sinopharm, or I think the equivalent would be the Serum Institute vaccine in India, the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, I would be in favor of taking that. Having said that, a new technology that has come in with a very accelerated trial phase worries me because we are putting a completely new technology into human populations, not keeping in mind as to which way this piece of mRNA will turn in the environment of my cell. Because remember, any new gene or protein producing piece of RNA has to be necessarily under control of my own cell control, gene controls. Now, if I'm going to roll it out in the population, I don't know which way it will turn. The manufacturers, of course, say that the piece of RNA will be deteriorated very fast in the cell. But is that too fast to produce the protein amount that I need to stimulate my immune system? Or is it too slow? Is it going to stay on? Because remember, the immune system is a very tricky person. I mean, a tricky scenario. We don't know how this piece of nucleic acid that I'm introducing into the cellular environment going to behave? And I would put the analogy with genetically modified foods. People have that apprehension at the back of their minds that you're introducing new nucleic acids into my food chain. Who knows how it's going to turn? And I don't think, and I work in the technology, so I don't think we can predict which way it's going to turn. So if given a choice, yes, I would, for short-term use and short-term protection, let's go with the conventional one to protect our high-risk groups and wait and watch how this the new technology rolls out in when it's rolled out in the population at large.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Singh. So you would like to go for the conventional one. Now my question is to Dr. Ramin Goyal. Dr. Goyal, the same question to you. Whether you would like to go for the latest technology or the tested, tried, conventional method, the same thing which were used earlier. That to just clarify for the benefit of viewers, the Pfizer is using the latest technology which was not used earlier. The Oxford vaccines are the one which were used, the same technology which were used conventionally earlier in the vaccine. So, Dr. Goyal, which is your preference?
So I think my preference will depend on the kind of data that has been generated. I would completely agree with Dr. Nishi that I will prefer the conventional vaccine, provided it gets accepted in UK. I have serious doubt, and not only doubt, the very fact that people in India were given vaccine during the trial period, it undercuts the randomization. So if the people who are ministers and officers who got vaccine, then the entire trial itself is questionable in India, because then there is then you don't have this is the basis of research. If the person is aware that he has got a vaccine, then we know that there is a bias in the distribution. So my preference will be, of course, a Oxford vaccine, provided it gets accepted in UK. Not because the UK regulators are better, it's the same, but the way trial has been conducted, this is the basis of research on which if I come to know of this kind of work being done in India, the entire trial gets scrubbed at the outset. So I'll wait for Oxford vaccines acceptance, and I'm aware that it has been submitted to regulators in UK and is likely to be accepted in 2 or 3 days. And if that happens, I will have the Serum Institute vaccine in India, because it's the same vaccine ultimately.
Dr. Goyal, you are putting a serious charge for that in India such type of trial has been done. Yes, we have heard in the newspaper, it has come in the newspaper and the TV also, that one of the minister in Haryana claimed that he was given on the trial basis one vaccine which reacted. So according to you, it is not he was not supposed to know about the trial? That is a very because we were also not aware that we were thinking that we have to give a consent. So it means we were knowing that we are going to be vaccinated.
No. So yeah, Nusrat, you want to
I
say?
think the Professor Dr. Nusrat wants to answer for this.
Yeah, so basically when you do a trial, there's randomization. So you might get the vaccine, you might get a placebo, which is not the vaccine. So in that case, you should not know which arm you are in, whether you're vaccinated or whether you've got the placebo. The second point that I would like to add about the choices is that maybe if it is kind of delayed and we receive the vaccine a little later, I would also like to build my choices on the effectivity. So if somebody is claiming an effectivity of 90% and the other one has got a 60, I would go for the one which has a 90% effectivity.
Okay, thank you very much for this reply. Now, my question to Dr. Srivastav is, what will happen if vaccination is done at a slow pace? Because see, in India, although now the report has just appeared today that they are going to do a dry trial in two districts on the 4 states. But you know, we are 1.4 billion people. We are unlike UK and other countries. So what will happen? Like Dr. Nishi Singh says in Dubai, so Dubai is fine. They can vaccinate in a once time the entire population. But in India, it's not that easy. And especially for the rural areas we can think for the urban, but the rural area is difficult thing. So what will happen if vaccination is done at a slow pace or refused by large number of people in India? What is going to happen? Because there was a news report, I read it, that 70% people are saying that we don't want the vaccine now. So what is going to happen?
So let me complicate the question further. Okay, Dr. Goyal. Uh, how many parts of the country receive electricity for 24 hours of the day? And what percentage is electricity available for only about 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours? Dr. Nishi's situation is different to us because that part of the world will have 24 hours of electricity. Now, if you're saying you've got a vaccine that needs to be kept at, forget about the minus 70 degrees, okay? That chain for how many centers is going to be available in India, you can count on your fingertips. But even if it was 2 to 8 degrees, that means you require a fridge. How many places, whether it is some part of the backwaters of Kerala or a city or a town away from Bhubaneswar in Orissa, or the parts of say Kanpur and eastern UP thereabouts, how many of these places are going to have uninterrupted electric supply? And that what is going to happen to basically your vaccine is a protein, and that simply by the basics of small proteins or proteins which are manufactured in the lab that require a very complicated kind of situation to keep them from being denatured. How many of these proteins are going to get denatured simply because there was not enough electric supply for the fridge to keep that temperature? So that is one. The second thing is that all of these vaccines are going to be requiring a second dose. That means that the vaccine distributor who supplied this vaccine to the interior of, say, Gujarat or Rajasthan, he needs to come back in a month's time to provide that. So is it going to be a slow process or a fast process? I think the answer is pretty clear, isn't it? I don't think we can make it a fast process. It is going to be even slower than what we anticipate it to be. But in that slowness, we still need to make sure that the vaccine, the way it is required to be given in a place like the UAE, where Dr. Nishi is practicing, is it going to be in the same kind of platform? Because we are not talking about Mumbai and Delhi. Yeah, this is in these places it is possible. But what about those places which are not Mumbai and not Delhi? Yes, other places where you're going to require that kind of cold chain, that kind of distribution. And as you have rightly already said in your question, we are 1.3 billion people who are going to need 2 doses. So the logistics of the vaccine distribution are going to be a bigger challenge. It might be easier to put toothpaste back into the toothpaste tube than to give vaccine to 1.3 billion people 2 doses 1 month apart. So I think that we ought to be preparing for those challenges rather than some of the things that we might have thought about as being our bigger frontiers that we need to cross. Dr. Goyal.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Srivastav. Dr. Hussain, you have heard what Dr. Srivastav said, and because Dr. Srivastav is in metro in Mumbai and you are in Lucknow, and UP, as Dr. Srivastav also mentioned about the Kanpur and the nearby areas, and you know the condition of electricity there and the situation of the bureaucracy or those who are going to put the going to be giving the health workers who is going to give the vaccine. Now, what do you think? What is going to happen in India with so much population and with the speed? Whether we will be able to achieve our target in any of the next 5 years or 10 years with this speed or not? Because the population is growing, and the vaccination is good. And as one of the panelists mentioned about the vaccine is validity is 6 months or maximum 1 year. It means again next year again the same thing is to be repeated for 1.3 billion people. We can understand in USA people are taking flu shots every year, but their population and their awareness and their infrastructure is far different than India. What do you say about this, Dr. Hussain?
Well, actually, I was personally and even otherwise pretty surprised by how the whole reaction to this COVID situation was. We did have initially a very difficult close down period, but subsequently, I feel that COVID has given us a lot of lessons, and whatever, because there has been an immense development in the health sector. I don't know if it's the right word to use, but thanks to COVID. And you will not believe, but at this point, we are doing almost like 8 million tests have been completed in UP, and areas like as he's mentioning, Eastern UP, Banda, Azamgarh, everywhere, they have actually developed molecular labs which are functioning and testing using RT-PCR. So I think we Indians are really good when we are given a challenge. And this is a definite challenge that has been given. The politics also somehow has been linked to this. So I feel that the ruling governance in various states is out to prove that they are doing better than others as far as the control of COVID is concerned. So even before the vaccine has got approval from CDSCO and DCGI, we have in government sector received lists in which we are listing out the healthcare workers and the possible vaccinators who can be available in our institutes and different institutes. So I think people are already looking ahead. And as far as the cold chain of 2 to 8 degrees is concerned, I think that will be maintained because primary healthcare centers do have backup electricity and they do have refrigerators. So we can make it happen. Right now, they are looking at numbers of 300 million from what I understand. And you have that first group of healthcare workers over 60 years and the people with comorbidities who are going to be targeted. So I feel it's doable. Of course, it is a huge exercise, but it can be done.
Okay, you say it can be done.
The second dose definitely worries me. For people coming back for the second dose, definitely worries me. And I understand that that is mandatory because without that, the effectivity is going to go away even faster. The other
Okay.
is the duration that you're talking of, is how frequently we'll have to repeat this. One, maybe if we can break this chain of the epidemic and make it an endemic disease by even make it like a 6 month or a 1 year effectivity might work. The second is it's possible that it might have a long-term effectivity. We don't know because our trials have not been beyond 6 months.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Hussain. Although we know that many of the places, especially the rural area, there are no electricity. And when there is no electricity, how the temperature they are going to maintain. And as Dr. Srivastava says, that once the temperature will not be maintained, the efficacy will go down, the efficiency will go down, then what is going to happen? Anyways, now Dr. Nishi Singh, although in your UAE, there is no problem of electricity, nothing. So my question to you is, after the vaccination, although you are not going to take vaccination so soon, but to those who are taking vaccination, are they supposed to, they are required to even wear the mask and the social distancing, or they say, now I'm been vaccinated, this is my vaccine certificate, now I can move around here and there, go to the pub, like the celebrities are celebrating in Mumbai 5-star deluxe hotel, dancing there in the night at 2:30 a.m. And they says, no, we don't know. The COVID says we should not be allowed to go. What you say about this?
It's interesting you said about the partying season in Mumbai, and I think Dubai beats Mumbai hollow because all the Mumbai cars actually come to Dubai to party. So you should, and this is now the peak party season with the shopping festival and perfect weather to be in Dubai. Now, having said that, I would take a sober note here and reiterate the fact that the vaccine does not give you an immunity passport at all. It is not providing sterilizing immunity. It is only ameliorating the disease from disease severity to make sure that you don't die or have serious morbidity following the infection. So please let this message go out very loud and clear, having that no matter which vaccine candidate you have accepted, it does not give you an immunity passport, and you cannot be wearing the vaccination certificate as a badge of honor because that is strictly not true.
Okay. Dr. Goyal, you have heard all three of them. Now, my question to you is, because Dr. Srivastava has raised a very important point. He says because of the population, because of the infrastructure deficiency in India, although Dr. Nujat Hussain says that no, we are out of it and we already got the list. But in India, those who are going to be vaccinated are 50 plus, they have mentioned. And now, suppose a person is 80 plus and a 50 plus is also eligible. Are we going to have some step by step or at random? So if I am 50 plus, I will be getting more priority than the 80 plus. Tomorrow I will say I am also eligible. Why should I wait for the 80 plus to go ahead of me? Because the government says 50 plus. On UK, I just want to add one more thing. In UK, it is, they have started with 90 plus and then 85 plus, then 80, they are coming down step by step. But here in India, the government says 50 plus, or even those who are having a comorbidity, even the less, they can immediately in the second round after the army, police, and the medical health workers.
So I think this is a decision which government has to take based on the data that is coming in, that which are the people who are at a higher risk. Now, obviously, when you say whether 80 plus or whether 50 plus, one has to draw a line. Suppose you say 80 plus, then 82 plus or 88 plus, or 86 plus or 84 plus. So, let's not get into that kind of argument. If government has taken a decision that those who are 60 plus automatically gets it and those below with comorbidity gets it, we have to go with it, because somebody has to, somewhere the buck has to stop. But this slow vaccination issue is not about logistic. I think the bigger issue is what Dr. Nishi earlier mentioned, is about the antigenicity pressure. So if vaccination happens slowly, or if people are reluctant to take vaccine, as I see 50% of the panelists here, what will happen is that the virus, when it is pressured by a limited number of vaccine, it will mutate faster to survive. And the vaccine efficacy will become less. So the possibility of a herd immunity becomes less if you have a drawn out vaccination plan for 5 years, rather than if you are able to compress it in 1 year or 6 months. So I think the only way this disease and related deaths and morbidity can be reduced, and all this discussion about herd immunity that has been going on for 8 months, can only be achieved if we rapidly vaccinate our population in next 7 to 8 months. What I'm not talking of the entire population, let's say 60% or 70% of the population, so that the transmission stops. So the speed of vaccination has nothing to do with logistic. That's a government challenge and challenge to healthcare workers to deliver. But as far as the public is concerned, acquiring herd immunity is the baseline, which should only come through rapid vaccination. This is my take on it.
Okay, thank you very much. I have lots of questions and I would like to ask those questions, but the time is not allowing me. So now what I will do is, I want one by one, starting from Dr. Srivastava, what message you would like to give to the public at large, and if any suggestions to the government. But the main thing is the public is in dilemma, because if you, being all the medical expert, if you cannot decide whether we should go for vaccine or not, what a layperson like me or the other public in India, how they will decide whether they should take the vaccine or not? What message you would like to give now to the public at large? And if any suggestion, if you have for the government. Dr. Srivastava, please.
All right. So how much time do I have? 30 seconds, I think.
No, you can go for 1 minute, no problem.
1 minute. Okay. All right. I think that a great deal of what is being discussed either at social media or in public platforms is something that needs to be taken with a pinch of salt, because the most important scientific part of what the vaccine and its delivery is going to be is probably down to the 1% that comes to you on your email or your messenger or your WhatsApp or whatever it is that you're following and reading. I think that is the 1% that you must concentrate on, focus on. And that whether or not you are a health worker or a layperson, you ought to be following only that 1%, because you will read a lot of junk that is coming out of the hysteria. Let me tell you something that will put this in perspective. Between March and September, the number of publications on COVID were in excess of 33,000, 34,000. That was the total number of publications between March and September of 2019. Between September and November, end of November, 2/3 of these publications were withdrawn because they were found to be having neither a scientific basis nor be able to stand scientific scrutiny. So I think that relying on a public platform to educate yourself, that's a mistake. I know it is not going to be possible for a layperson to follow up on all medical matters, but you still need to pick the platform which is likely to be the most authentic. That's one. The second thing is, like I have already mentioned, 85% of people who get COVID are not going to go into even finding out that they've gotten COVID, and that you may get an antibody that may or may not last. That's something that we will know only as time goes on.
Okay.
The third thing is that the vaccine, to my mind, if you're going to go by everything that you have been taught or told or shared on public platforms, then I think that there may be something that you will be disappointed about. The
Okay.
fourth thing is the
Please be brief, doctor. Time is not there
all right,
now.
last point that
Yeah.
I'm picking
Yeah. Yes, please.
is I have already made my recommendations to government of Maharashtra, so I'm not going to be sharing that here. So I will stop here.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Srivastava. Dr. Hussain, advice to the public, if any one advice you want to give.
Pretty much in continuation with Dr. Srivastava's message, I think there's another huge lesson that we have learned over the past 1 year is the havoc that is played by social media. In especially when it came to COVID initially, we had like a lot of negativity all over. And let this not happen to the vaccine program and to subsequent preventive measures of COVID. And people need to understand what is right and what is wrong, what is being circulated out there. We need to trust certain sites. So I suggest that if you really need your data out there, go to CDC, go to the Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, and other sites where you would get genuine information on COVID and its prevention.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Hussain. Dr. Nishi Singh, one advice you would like to give to the public at large.
Yeah, I think my previous two speakers have already said that just rely on reliable sources of information. And at least in UAE, we have a central COVID command center, and all information to the media is only given out. No doctor or healthcare worker is allowed to directly speak to the media or circulate any material on the social media, which effectively controls a lot of misquotes and misapprehensions that can go out in the community. I also want to say one thing to this, that please let this message also go across very loud and clear that vaccination alone is not going to halt this pandemic. Because the way the virus is evolving, we are already seeing the new strains coming in. So the vaccination may or may not, it's a big question mark, that it will help in halting the pandemic. So therefore, the public must continue with the social distancing measure, the personal protective measures, and the disinfection measures that have really toned down the mortality in the last few months. It was only in the first few months that we had such high mortality. After that, we've learned to live with it. And I think we will have to continue to learn to live with it, because vaccine is not the cure for this pandemic.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Singh. Dr. Goyal, very shortly, what is your advice to public?
So now, if I need to summarize this, first thing is vaccines are safe. Safety, we are not really doubting. And that is where we must discount what is coming on social media. Second thing is that which vaccine that obviously you can trust somebody, you can go to a rational person or your family physician or somebody or a media conference with Lal Goyal and get some real inputs as they are coming today. And take an informed decision. As Dr. Srivastava and all other panelists said, it has to be a decision based on your own analysis. But if you're a high-risk person, then it's a good idea to get vaccines so that at least you have some immunity for next 6 months till better vaccines are available or the virus mutates, as Dr. Om Srivastava said, in a way that it is not very, very virulent. So I think this is probably the take-home message from my side for public.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Goyal. So today you have seen that medical doctors, experts advises about the vaccine. although they all agree that the vaccine is required, but whether we should take it now or after some time. Anyway, we in India, we have to wait because it not till now, at this moment, no vaccine has been approved by the government of India until as the approval will not come, and then it will take time. By that time, I am sure more data will come and one can take a decision. So thank you very much for joining us. And today's program, which has been live telecasted by V4 News, Global TV, V4 Stream, Malnadu TV, News Gaon se, Samvad Saroka News, as well as it was shown live on Facebook and YouTube. And our endeavor is to bring to you the latest topic every day. And tomorrow, media conference with Lal Goyal, the topic is too much democracy. Yes, you heard very clearly and loudly, too much democracy. And the panelists are Advocate Deepak Dhingra, Law Linkers Company, New Delhi, Advocate Ramesh Kumar Sharma, Mathura, Advocate Sunil Bhargava, Mathura, Advocate Arvind Kumar Sharma, Supreme Court, New Delhi. So please do join tomorrow media conference with Lal Goyal at 10:30 a.m. Thank you very much, Dr. Srivastav. Thank you very much, Dr. Hussain. Thank you very much, Dr. Nishi Singh. And thank you very much, Dr. Raman Goyal, for joining and giving and enlightening our viewers with your expert opinions. Thank you, all the viewers, for watching.